My name is Mark. I'm an ordinary guy. Or at least I used to be, before a single weekend 1 year ago rewrote the chemistry of my brain. I don't sleep much these days. When I do, I don't dream of monsters with fangs or cosmic horrors from the stars. I dream of the sound of metal sliding against a window pane. It started with a simple favor. My closest friend, Liam, had built this beautiful, isolated modern home out in the heavily wooded hills of Oakhaven. It was a stunning piece of architecture, all sharp angles, concrete, and massive plate glass windows looking out into absolute nothingness. A few days before the incident, Liam called me. His voice was frantic, competing with the background noise of an airport terminal.
Hey Mark, man, I am so sorry to dump this on you last minute, but this emergency consulting gig just came up in the city. It's huge for my business. I have to leave tonight. The house is going to be completely empty for a few days, and the security system has been acting glitchy. Can you please just stay there? Just keep the lights on so it looks occupied.
I didn't mind. Honestly, I welcomed the quiet. I told him I'd head over the following afternoon. Before he hung up, Liam remembered one last detail.
Oh, and if you see a guy hanging around the edge of the property, don't freak out. That's Arthur. He lives about a quarter mile down the gravel road. He's a retired carpenter, incredibly friendly guy. He keeps an eye on the place for me when I'm gone.
If only I had questioned how Arthur knew exactly when Liam was leaving.
I arrived at the house around 4 in the afternoon. The air was crisp, carrying the sharp scent of damp pine and oncoming rain. As I was unloading my duffel bag from the trunk, a man stepped out from the tree line. It was Arthur.
You must be Mark.
He called out, waving a calloused hand. He wore a heavy flannel jacket and a welcoming smile that crinkled the edges of his eyes.
Liam told me you'd be keeping the place warm.
He was exactly as Liam described. Warm, affable. He offered to help carry my bags inside. I invited him in for a drink, and we ended up spending the entire evening sitting in the spacious living room, chatting about everything and nothing. We drank a couple of beers, played a few rounds of chess on Liam's vintage board, and watched the fog roll over the hills. Arthur was the perfect neighbor. He left around 8. Reminding me to lock the back door securely because the mountain winds can play tricks on the latches. The house felt infinitely larger the moment he left. Midnight. The storm never fully broke, but the wind was alive, clawing at the glass. I was lying on the living room sofa, halfway between consciousness and a shallow sleep, when I heard it. My eyes snapped open. The living room was bathed in pitch blackness, save for the pale moonlight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I tilted my head up slightly, looking toward the side window that faced the dense woods. There, against the silver light, was a silhouette. It was just standing perfectly still, staring directly into the dark living room, directly at the couch. My throat went entirely dry. A cold, prickling sweat erupted across my forehead. I waited for the shatter of glass. I waited for a scream. But nothing happened. The moment the wind started to howl with a sudden, violent fury, the silhouette vanished into the dark. I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, a branch, a visual hallucination born of exhaustion and the isolation of the woods. I locked every inner door, walked upstairs to the guest bedroom, and finally managed to drift into a fitful, terrified sleep. I woke up to absolute darkness, not just the darkness of night, but the dead, heavy blackness that comes when every single standby light, digital clock, and appliance in a house suddenly dies. The power was out, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Then came the sound from downstairs. My instincts took over before my brain could fully process the terror. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen was completely dead, black. No matter how many times I mashed the power button, it wouldn't respond. The battery had been full when I went to sleep. Whoever it was, he came well prepared. He hadn't just tripped a breaker, he had cut the main lines, and somehow my phone was completely dead.
That bastard was walking through the kitchen. The footsteps were heavy. Even from upstairs, I could hear them echoing through the open floor plan. I couldn't stay in the bedroom. If he came up the stairs, I'd be cornered like an animal. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet making no sound on the carpet. I crept toward the hallway closet, a deep, cedar-lined space packed with spare blankets and winter coats. I pulled the slatted door shut just enough to leave a microscopic gap, burying myself beneath the heavy wool jackets. He was coming up. Through the narrow slit in the closet door, I watched the top of the stairs. The moonlight from the hallway window illuminated him. He wore a dark, grease-stained jacket, a hood pulled low over his face, and in his right hand, he held a heavy, rusted crowbar. He paused at the top of the stairs. He listened. I clamped my hand over my mouth, biting my own palm to suppress the sound of my shallow, ragged breathing. My chest burned. The air inside the closet felt hot, thick, and smelling heavily of mothballs and my own primal fear. He stopped right outside my hiding spot. I could see the dark fabric of his jacket through the slats. I could smell him, a foul mixture of stale tobacco, damp earth, and cheap alcohol. My ears were ringing so loudly I thought he would hear it. My muscles locked. I braced myself to scream, to fight, to throw myself forward when the door opened. He turned away. He thought the upstairs was clear. He began heading back down the stairs, his footsteps getting fainter. But I knew I couldn't stay in that closet forever. If he decided to torch the place, or if he found a weapon and came back up, I was dead. I had to move. I pushed the closet door open. I crept to the banister and looked down. The stranger was walking toward the far end of the downstairs hallway. He opened a door. He was going down into the basement.
This was my only chance. I sprinted down the stairs as silently as a ghost. I didn't head for the front door. It was secured with a heavy deadbolt that would take too long to turn in the dark. Instead, I darted into the kitchen. My hands scrambled across the countertops, searching for anything. A knife, a heavy glass. My fingers wrapped around the handle of a heavy cast-iron skillet sitting on the stovetop. I gripped it with both hands, my knuckles turning white. I stepped into the shadows right next to the open basement door and waited. The man's head emerged from the darkness of the stairwell. He stepped onto the kitchen hardwood, his back completely turned to me. I swung the skillet with every ounce of strength left in my adrenaline-fueled body. He went down instantly, like a sack of wet cement. The crowbar clattered across the kitchen tiles. The man lay face down, groaning softly, unconscious but alive. My hands were shaking violently. I dropped the pan. I needed to secure him. I ran to Liam's utility closet, grabbed a roll of heavy-duty zip ties and some thick nylon rope. Working in the dark, my heart hammering against my ribs, I dragged his heavy body to a sturdy wooden dining chair and bound him tightly, wrists behind the back, ankles to the chair legs.
I didn't have a working phone, so I knew what I had to do. I bolted out the back door, sprinting down the gravel driveway. The cold night air slammed into my face, clearing the fog from my brain. I reached the main road and screamed as loud as I could. Lights began flicking on in the distance. The sudden, chaotic noise woke the entire neighborhood. Windows opened and sleepy, panicked voices called out into the dark. I sprinted through the damp air straight towards Arthur's house.
Help! Someone broke in! Help!
Arthur stood there on his porch, holding a flashlight, looking bewildered in his pajamas.
Mark? What on earth? What happened, son?
Someone broke in. He cut the power. He broke into Liam's house. I managed to knock him out. He's tied up in the kitchen. We need to call the police right now.
Arthur's expression instantly shifted. The confusion drained from his face, replaced by a cold, unsettling stillness.
Oh, you knocked him out? You weren't supposed to be able to do that.
What? Before he could answer, another neighbor yelled from the road, shouting that they had already called the authorities. Within 20 minutes, blue and red lights were flashing through the trees. The police swarmed to the property and arrested the man tied to the chair. As it turned out, the intruder was an ex-convict, a career burglar released from prison just 3 weeks prior. The police explained their theory to me later at the station. They assumed the burglar targeted Liam's house simply because Liam was wealthy and the place looked abandoned. It seemed like an open and shut case, a random, opportunistic crime. The intruder desperately tried to tell the police a different story. He claimed he only did it because an old man had found him hiding in the woods and threatened to turn him in unless he broke into Liam's house. But the police ignored him. They chuckled, dismissing it entirely. They told me he was just an ex-con trying to invent a ghost to pass the blame.
That was a year ago, and there is a reason I haven't slept properly since.
A few months after the incident, Liam decided to finally sell that house. While he was clearing out the basement, he found a rugged, tactical walkie-talkie wedged deep under an old storage cupboard. It was an advanced military-style model, the kind designed to automatically log and store recordings of all incoming and outgoing transmissions onto an internal SD card. Liam plugged the card into his laptop, found the audio logs from that exact night, and sent me the file. He thought it would bring me closure to hear the thief's frustration. I played it. Through the crackle of the audio file, I heard the intruder's voice speaking to someone else.
He's not upstairs. The bedroom is empty. He must have run out into the woods already.
And then, a second later, the walkie-talkie crackled back. A voice replied to him. A warm, gravelly, friendly voice.
Good. I'll turn off my porch light. If he's in the woods, he'll see the light go out and head straight for my cabin anyway. Drive his car around to the back when you're done. We'll handle him here.
Arthur sent him. When I frantically called Liam to tell him about the audio, he told me Arthur had sold his cabin and vanished just days after that night. Liam had assumed the old man was simply shaken up by the neighborhood break-in. But now we know the truth. We know why he ran. And to this day, nobody knows where he went. Arthur is still out there. And the only reason I am alive to tell this story is because I chose to fight. Instead of running straight into the arms of the friendly neighbor,